What? Rory's got this.
Rory's got it.
He's got it. That's cool.
Welcome back to the Happy Hour, guys, and welcome to part 2 of our beer brewing process show featuring Brad, Duncan, and of course Rory of the Aspen Brewing Company.
Oh yeah.
Last week we walked you through the first part of the process, from putting the raw grain into the mash tun all the way to bringing the wort over to the brew kettle. And if you don't know what those words mean, you didn't watch last week's episode. Here's the link. It's alright, we'll wait. Alright, now that we're all back up to speed, Rory, let's start brewing.
So we've got 8 barrels in the kettle now. That is for a 7-barrel batch. Let's take into account both the volume that the hops take up once they're added in there, as well as the evaporation that happens naturally during the boil. So I'm turning it up to boiling, which at this altitude up here is at about 196 or so. So now while this is heating up to boil, I'm going to pull the spent grain.
That's right, once you've used that grain to make wort, or grain tea, you gotta put it somewhere, and first things first, it's gotta come out of the mash tun. In brewing, they use a very sophisticated instrument to pull the grain out of the mash tun. It's called a hoe. Yep, 1 pint for all this as payment, not looking like such a good idea. I have a deep sense of accomplishment right now. You give that spent grain to farmers and it goes to feed cattle. So Rory was just calling Dick the farmer. Hopefully Dick will come by and pick up today's spent grain. Ladies and gentlemen, the kettle is now boiling. Time to add the hops.
These are our hops for the brew. Alright. These are the first 2 editions of 3 editions. So our first 2 editions are Mount Hoods, and our 3rd edition is Goldings. The idea being at the beginning, the hops you put in get cooked in the wort as it's boiling, and you get the bitterness out of the hops. Halfway through, you start getting a little bit more of the aroma characters because those hops aren't cooked for as long, and that last edition is all for aroma for the most part.
So basically, when you talk about triple hopping, every beer is triple hopped, right?
Yeah,
at least.
At least. In 60 minutes, in an hour, I'll add my 2nd edition. 2nd edition of hops. And this often gets the boil going really crazy, so be careful.
Man, that smells good.
10 minutes after that is when we turn the flame off, alright? And then we whirlpool it. So the spinning action of the wort allows all the hops and little bits and pieces of grain that may have made it through the lauter, get all the solids together in the middle. And during the whirlpool is when we add our 3rd edition of hops, alright? So at this point it's not boiling anymore, it's still really, really hot, and that 3rd edition of hops should add a whole bunch of aroma to the beer.
So at this point, after the boil, the wort is a sterile, sugary, hop-flavored liquid. And now Rory's gonna take that liquid and run it through a heat exchanger, which is gonna knock the temperature down to 70 degrees and pump it over to the fermenter. 70 degrees is perfect weather for guess what? Fermentation. So in 7 minutes, the magic happens. Well, you know, another part of the magic happens, but a really important part of the magic.
We've got our oxygenated wort coming in like this. The yeast feeding it at this very, very narrow spot here. So the wort really just dissipates the yeast, wakes it right up, gives it oxygen to breathe, and sugars to eat.
It's the perfect place for yeast to be.
It is the perfect place for yeast to be.
Got a Pilsner in here. Got a blonde ale in here. And a brown working up here. And I'm tired. But you know what? It's a beer kind of tired. So with our brown ale safely in the fermenter, we've got about 2 weeks to wait while that yeast does what it's supposed to do. Eat sugar and create carbon dioxide and alcohol. Meantime, I'm gonna raise the stakes to my mouth. So it's a couple weeks later. Rory's gotten even more good looking, as you can see. And this, ladies and gentlemen, this is, I would like to say, our brown beer.
Indeed it is.
All right.
Whose name is on the brew log.
Here we go. And it's gorgeous. The fruits of our labors. Dude, let's drink some. Thank you, my friend. We did good.